I was sitting at my small desk in my dorm room, surrounded by half-finished notebooks, empty coffee mugs, and the kind of clutter that screams college freshmen trying to survive midterms. I was only 19, a year into university, and the world already felt like too much. That evening, my phone buzzed on the desk. I expected it to be another group chat notification, or my best friend reminding me to eat something, but when I turned it over, my heart stopped. It was a message from Mr. Callahan, my parents' lawyer. "Call me immediately. It's urgent." I froze. Lawyers don't text 19-year-old girls at night unless something is terribly wrong. For a moment, my fingers hovered over the screen, unwilling to touch it, as though the words would vanish if I ignored them. My parents, to me, had always been strict but steady. My father was a respected businessman, my mother a woman of grace and quiet control. They weren't perfect, but they were my parents. What could possibly be so urgent? I dialed, my hand trembling. He picked up on the first ring. His voice was heavy, strained, and unusually low. "Emily, listen to me carefully," he said. "I didn't want to do this over the phone, but you have to know the truth. About your parents." My chest tightened. "What truth? What happened? Are they okay?" He sighed, and in that moment, I heard the weight of years in his tone. "They're alive, but they are not who you think they are. There are documents, evidence, things they kept from you. And once you hear it, your life will never be the same." The room around me seemed to dissolve. My textbooks, the lamp, the walls, everything blurred until all I could hear was the thundering of my heartbeat. My parents? Secrets? My mind spun with possibilities, each one worse than the last. Did they commit a crime? Were they hiding money? Did they lie about who I was? Mr. Callahan's words grew darker. They made choices years ago that put you in danger, without you even knowing it. And now those choices have caught up with them, and with you. My knees gave out and I sank to the floor, clutching the phone as if it were my only lifeline. I wanted to scream, to demand he tell me everything immediately, but my throat was dry. Finally, I whispered, "What? What did they do?" There was a pause, too long, too suffocating. Then he said, "Come to my office tomorrow morning. Bring nothing but yourself. Do not tell your parents I contacted you. If you do, you might never get the chance to hear the truth." The line went dead. I sat there in the silence of my room, my pulse racing. The shadows on the wall suddenly looked like threats. Every creak of the old dorm building like a warning. My parents had raised me on rules and expectations, but never love. They always kept me at arm's length, controlled every aspect of my life. What I wore, where I went, who I spoke to. I thought it was just their way. Strict, cold, traditional. But now it felt sinister. As I lay on my bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I replayed every interaction I'd ever had with them. The unexplained locked drawer in my father's office. The late-night phone calls that ended as soon as I entered the room. My mother's sudden anger whenever I asked about her childhood. Things that once seemed harmless quirks suddenly felt like puzzle pieces, snapping into place. And the picture forming in my mind was terrifying. By midnight, I was gripping the blanket like it could protect me from the invisible storm brewing around my life. Tomorrow I would walk into Mr. Callahan's office, and the fragile idea of family I had clung to for 19 years would shatter. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of failing a test or disappointing my parents. I was afraid of who they really were. The next morning felt like walking into the unknown with a blindfold on. I hardly slept, just a few restless hours, filled with fragmented dreams of my parents whispering in the dark, of doors I couldn't open, of shadows that turned into faces. When the alarm finally went off at 7 a.m., my stomach was a knot of fear. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. Not my roommate, not my best friend, not even a quick text to my parents. I threw on a hoodie and jeans, tied my hair back in a messy ponytail, and shoved my shaking hands into my pockets. The whole walk to Mr. Callahan's office, my mind spun with wild theories. Maybe my father had an affair. Maybe my mother wasn't my real mom. Maybe they were bankrupt. But why the secrecy? Why the urgency? The law office was in an old brick building downtown, tucked between a bank and a bookstore. When I pushed open the glass door, a wave of cold air hit me. The place smelled of paper and coffee, and the silence was suffocating. The receptionist gave me a quick nod. "He's expecting you," she said, gesturing toward the frosted glass door with Callahan and Associates etched on it. I swallowed hard and pushed the door open. Mr. Callahan was already standing, a thick folder in his hands. His eyes, tired, sad, maybe even guilty, landed on me as though he wished I'd never come. "Emily," he said gently, "sit down." I sat, my legs bouncing with nervous energy. "You said you had to tell me the truth. Please, just say it." He hesitated, then placed the folder on the desk and slid it toward me. My hands shook as I pulled it closer. Inside were documents, photographs, letters, all worn, some with faded ink. "Your parents are not who they claim to be," he said finally. "The names you've known them by, they're not their real names." My chest constricted. "What do you mean?" "They changed their identities nearly 20 years ago," he continued, "before you were even born. And they did it to hide from the consequences of something very dark." The room tilted. "Consequences of what?" He leaned back, his fingers pressing against his temple, as if the weight of the memory was crushing him. "Your father wasn't just a businessman, and your mother wasn't just a housewife. Together, they were part of something illegal, something dangerous. When it all collapsed, they disappeared, vanished, changed everything about themselves. And then they had you." My throat went dry. "Illegal? Dangerous? What did they do?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he pulled out a photograph. My parents, much younger, barely older than I was now, stood beside a man I didn't recognize. But it wasn't just their youth that unsettled me. It was the look in their eyes. Cold, calculated, almost cruel. "They weren't victims," he said grimly. "They were willing participants. And now, after all these years, the truth is surfacing, which means you, Emily, are caught in the crossfire." I stared at the photo until my vision blurred. This couldn't be real. My parents weren't saints, but they weren't criminals. They tucked me into bed as a child, took me to school, lectured me when I stayed out too late. That wasn't the life of people running from the law, was it? Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but anger quickly followed. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Why me? Why not them?" "Because they'll never admit it," he said, voice heavy with certainty. "And because the people who were hurt by their choices are starting to look for answers. If they find you before you're prepared," he stopped, glancing at the door as if even speaking it out loud was dangerous. My heart pounded so hard I thought I'd faint. My parents had built my entire life on lies. Lies that were now unraveling, thread by thread. I pushed the folder back toward him with trembling hands. "What am I supposed to do with this?" He looked at me, eyes dark with a warning I couldn't yet understand. "Decide who you believe," he said. "The parents who raised you, or the truth that's been buried all these years." I walked out of his office feeling like the ground beneath me had cracked wide open. The city outside buzzed with life, cars honking, people rushing to work, laughter spilling from a cafe. But to me, everything felt muted, like I was moving underwater. And for the first time in 19 years, I realized I didn't know who my parents really were. The city streets blurred around me as I walked back to campus, clutching my backpack like it might anchor me to reality. The words Mr. Callahan had spoken echoed endlessly in my head. They're not who they claim to be. By the time I reached my dorm, my hands were still trembling. I locked the door behind me and sat on my bed, pulling the blanket tight around my shoulders like a shield. I tried to convince myself this was a mistake, some cruel misunderstanding. But the photograph wouldn't leave my mind. My parents, younger, colder, standing with that stranger. That night, when my parents called, I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, fear, and anger gnawed at me, so I picked up. "Emily," my mother's voice came through, clipped and precise as always. "How were your classes?" I swallowed hard, my voice shaking. "Fine, busy." There was silence on the line, as if she sensed something was wrong. "You sound tired." I wanted to scream, "Who are you, really? What are you hiding from me?" But I forced myself to mutter, "Just studying." When the call ended, I stared at the phone for a long time, wondering if I had just spoken to strangers disguised as my parents. The next morning, I couldn't focus on lectures or assignments. My professor's words blurred on the whiteboard, my notebook filling with scribbles instead of notes. By the afternoon, I found myself back at Mr. Callahan's office, unable to resist the need for more answers. He looked surprised when I walked in, but he didn't turn me away. Instead, he pulled another folder from his drawer and set it on the desk. "You deserve the truth," he said. Inside were newspaper clippings, grainy photographs, and court transcripts. I scanned the headlines, my eyes widening. "Corporate fraud scandal shakes East Coast. Millions vanish in offshore accounts." 2 associates wanted in connection with embezzlement and cover-up. My stomach twisted. Are you saying my parents— Yes, his voice was firm. Your father was not just involved. He orchestrated much of it, and your mother— She helped cover the tracks. They built false identities after fleeing. For nearly 2 decades, they've lived quietly, pretending to be respectable, pretending to be parents. But they are fugitives, Emily, and the case— It's not dead. The people who lost everything, they still want justice. The room spun. My parents, criminals. My father, who demanded excellence from me, who scolded me for breaking curfew, had stolen millions. My mother, who prided herself on appearances, had lied her way through life. I shook my head violently. No, that's impossible. They can't be— They raised me, Mr. Callahan leaned forward. They raised you because you completed their disguise. A family makes people look normal, untouchable. You were part of the mask. Emily, but the mask is slipping. Tears blurred my vision. Why are you telling me this? Why now? Because the truth has a way of surfacing. And once it does, you need to be prepared. If authorities, or worse, those they betrayed, find you unprotected, you'll be the one who suffers. I shoved the papers away, my hands shaking. No, I don't believe you. My parents aren't saints, but they aren't criminals. He studied me quietly, then handed me a small envelope. Then don't take my word for it. This is proof, signed statements, photographs, records. Take it, read it when you're ready. I grabbed the envelope but refused to open it. My heart was breaking, but denial was the only thing keeping me upright. I stormed out of his office, the envelope burning in my hand like it contained fire. Outside, the sky was gray, heavy with rain. I ran back toward campus, my tears mixing with the drizzle. Every step felt like I was running further from the life I thought I knew. Back in my dorm room, I sat at my desk, staring at the envelope. Hours passed. My roommate came and went. The world kept moving, but I sat frozen, staring. Finally, just before midnight, I tore it open. Inside was a photograph I hadn't seen before. My parents, standing beside that same unknown man. But this time, the man's face was circled in red ink. And beneath it, a single line of text. He was the one they betrayed. And he never forgave them. The room felt suddenly colder. My skin prickled. Whoever that man was, he wasn't just part of their past. He was a threat to my future. And for the first time, I realized this wasn't just about lies. This was about survival. I barely slept after opening that envelope. The photograph with the red circle haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, the man's face burned into my mind. Who was he? Why did Mr. Callahan say he was the one my parents betrayed? And worse, what if he was still out there waiting? By morning, my fear had hardened into something else. Anger. I couldn't carry this weight alone. I needed answers, from them. That evening, I boarded a bus to my parents' house. The ride felt endless, every bump in the road rattling my nerves. When I finally stepped off, the familiar suburban street looked different, almost sinister. Their perfectly trimmed lawn and spotless windows now felt like props in a play. I stood on the doorstep for what felt like an hour before finally ringing the bell. My mother opened the door, surprised. Emily, you didn't tell us you were coming home. Her smile was polished, practiced, but to me it looked hollow. I stepped inside, my heart pounding. My father was in the living room reading the newspaper. He looked up, startled. Well, this is unexpected. I couldn't hold it in anymore. Who are you? The words came out louder than I intended. They exchanged a quick glance, too quick. My mother frowned. What are you talking about? I pulled the photograph from my bag and slammed it on the coffee table. Their eyes locked onto it instantly. My father's face tightened. My mother's hand trembled slightly before she pulled it back. You need to explain this, I demanded, my voice shaking. Who is he? And why do I have to hear from a lawyer that you're not who you say you are? The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. My father finally set the newspaper aside and leaned forward, his eyes dark and unreadable. Where did you get this? It doesn't matter where, I shot back. What matters is the truth. You owe me that. My mother's composure cracked. Emily, we never wanted you to know. Not like this. Know what? I screamed, tears blurring my vision. That my life is a lie? That my parents are criminals? My father's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm, almost cold. We did what we had to do. Everything was to protect you. Protect me? I laughed bitterly. From what? From the people you betrayed? I pointed at the circled man in the photo. From him? Their faces paled. My mother sank into the couch, covering her mouth. My father rubbed his forehead, muttering something under his breath before finally saying, "His name is Richard Hale. He was our partner. We trusted him. He trusted us. But when the scandal broke, when the investigation closed in, we made a choice. We turned on him before he could turn on us." The words sliced through me. "You destroyed his life? We saved ours," my father said flatly. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "And what about mine? Did you ever think about what this would do to me?" My mother's voice broke, trembling. "We wanted you to have a normal life, Emily. That's why we built this. That's why we kept the past buried. You were never supposed to find out." I wanted to scream, to cry, to run. But all I could do was stand there, the walls closing in. The people who raised me, who I trusted, weren't victims at all. They were liars, survivors of their own making. And I, an unknowing accessory to their disguise. Finally, I whispered, "Mr. Callahan said the truth is surfacing. That people are looking for you, for us." My father's eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw something raw in him, fear. "Then we don't have much time," he said quietly. My mother grabbed my hand, desperate. "Emily, you need to trust us. Stay with us. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." But their touch felt foreign. Their words felt hollow. Trust? How could I trust them when every part of my life had been built on lies? As I pulled my hand away, the sound of a car pulling up outside broke the tension. Tires screeched, doors slammed. My father froze. My mother went pale. "They've found us," he whispered. And in that instant, I realized the nightmare wasn't just about secrets anymore. It was about survival, and it had just arrived at our doorstep. The sound of car doors slamming outside made my heart leap into my throat. My father's voice was low, tense. "Don't move." But I couldn't stop trembling. Through the window, I caught a glimpse of two dark sedans parked on the street. Men in suits stepped out, their movements sharp, purposeful. They weren't neighbors and they weren't friends. My mother clutched my wrist. "Emily, upstairs now." I pulled away. "No, tell me who they are." Her eyes glistened with fear. "People who know too much. People we hoped would never find us." A heavy knock thundered against the front door. My father stood, his shoulders rigid. For the first time, the man who had always seemed so in control looked fragile. "Stay quiet," he hissed. He opened the door only a crack. A tall man stood on the porch, rain dripping from his coat. His face was older now, harder, but I recognized him instantly. The man circled in the photo. Richard Hale. "Hello, John," he said, his voice chillingly calm. Or should I say, whatever name you're using now. My father's grip tightened on the door. "Richard, this isn't the place." Richard's eyes flicked past him and landed on me. His expression darkened. "And this must be Emily, the daughter you raised in your little fantasy world." My blood ran cold. "You know me?" "I know everything about you," he said, his gaze sharp. "I know what they stole. I know the lives they destroyed. And I know they've hidden behind you, parading as a perfect family while the rest of us suffered." "Enough," my father snapped, stepping outside, blocking Richard's view of me. "If you came for revenge, take it on me. Leave her out of this." Richard's voice turned to steel. "You don't get to decide who pays. You took everything from me, my freedom, my money, my reputation. For 20 years, I was branded a criminal while you walked away clean. And now it's my turn." The other men closed in, their presence suffocating. My mother pulled me back into the hallway, whispering frantically, "Don't say a word. Don't even breathe." But I couldn't stay silent. My voice cracked as I shouted, "Why me? What do you want from me?" Richard's eyes locked on mine. "I want you to know the truth. I want you to see who your parents really are. Not the heroes they pretended to be. Thieves, liars, betrayers," he sneered. "And then when you know, I want you to live with it, just like I had to live with the ruin they left behind." My chest tightened, every word cutting deeper than the last. My parents had destroyed his life, and I was the living proof of their lie. My father stepped forward, his fists clenched. "If you want to settle this, Richard, settle it with me. But leave my daughter out of it." Richard's voice dropped to a whisper, dangerous and calm. "You don't get to choose anymore." The tension exploded when one of the men shoved past my father into the house. My mother screamed, pulling me toward the stairs. My father tried to block them, but he was outnumbered. The living room, once pristine and orderly, became chaos. Shouts, footsteps, the crash of a lamp shattering. I scrambled up the stairs, my mother gripping my arm like a vice. But at the landing, I stopped. I couldn't run. Not yet. I turned, looking down at the man who had haunted the edges of my parents' past for so long. Richard looked up at me, his expression unreadable. You deserve to know everything, Emily. They didn't just betray me. They betrayed everyone who trusted them. And soon, the world will know. Before I could respond, one of his men pulled him back. We should go. Richard gave my parents one last look, then turned to me. Open your eyes before it's too late. And just like that, they were gone, their footsteps fading into the rain. Silence fell, broken only by my mother's ragged breathing. My father collapsed onto the couch, his face pale, drained. I stood frozen on the stairs, the echo of Richard's words sinking into me like poison. Open your eyes before it's too late. For 19 years, my parents had been my foundation. Now, I wasn't sure if they were my protectors or my destroyers. And the worst part? I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. The silence after Richard left was deafening. Rain tapped against the windows, the only sound in a house that had just been ripped open by secrets. My father sat slumped on the couch, his face buried in his hands. My mother paced the room like a trapped animal, muttering fragments of sentences that made no sense. But me? I stood at the foot of the stairs, frozen, the weight of Richard's words crashing over me. Open your eyes before it's too late. Finally, I broke the silence. My voice shook, but it was sharp enough to cut through the room. Is it true? Did you do it? Did you betray him? My father's head lifted slowly, his eyes bloodshot. Emily, you have to understand. We did what we had to do to survive. Survive? My voice cracked. You stole lives. You destroyed him. And you raised me in a lie. My mother rushed to me, her hands gripping mine desperately. We did it for you. Everything we built, every choice we made, it was so you would never know hunger, never know danger. We wanted you to have a life we couldn't. I pulled my hands away, shaking. You wanted me to live a lie. My father stood, his voice low and raw. Yes, a lie that kept you safe. A lie that gave you a future. The room swirled with rage, sorrow, and betrayal. For 19 years, I thought they were strict, cold, distant, but parents nonetheless. Now I realized they had never really been parents. They were fugitives hiding behind the mask of family, and I was part of their disguise. The envelope Mr. Callahan had given me sat on the table. My fingers brushed it, and I knew it held more than I was ready for. Documents, names, proof. The truth wasn't just about my parents anymore. It was about me. I opened it. Inside, along with the photographs, was a birth certificate. My breath caught. The name on it wasn't Emily Carter. It was Emily Hale. My knees gave out. No. No, this can't be. My father's face went pale. My mother burst into tears. Richard Hale wasn't just their betrayed partner. He was my biological father. The room spun as the pieces fell together. My parents, no, the people who raised me, hadn't just betrayed him financially. They had stolen me from him, taken his child, changed my name, built an entire world to erase the truth. Tears streamed down my face as I looked at them. You stole me. You lied to me my whole life. You didn't just ruin him, you ruined me. My mother fell to her knees, sobbing. Emily, please, we loved you like our own. But the words felt hollow, poisoned. My father reached for me, but I backed away. Don't, I whispered, my voice breaking. Don't touch me. The rain outside grew heavier, thundering against the house, as though the world itself was mourning. I picked up the photograph of Richard Hale, the man whose eyes now stared back at me like a reflection of my own. For the first time, I saw the resemblance, the shape of his face, the intensity in his gaze. He wasn't just a ghost from their past. He was part of me. I turned to the people who had raised me, my voice steady despite the storm inside. You told me lies to protect me. But the truth? The truth is what will set me free. And with that, I walked out the door into the rain, clutching the photograph. Behind me, I heard my mother's cries and my father's desperate calls. But I didn't turn back. Because the girl who walked into that house was their daughter. The girl who walked out was Emily Hale. And I would find the man they betrayed, not for revenge, but for answers, for the piece of myself they had stolen. The lie was over. The truth had just begun.